But this session, we've got James joining us, who's the head of learning and development from the Readiness Company. This session is exploring the value in the Microsoft Surface in the modern workplace, and all around how Surface can make a difference to the emerging hybrid work revolution. So, James, I will try and keep quiet for as long as I can. For those who know me, that's a challenge, and hand over the reins to yourself.
Thank you very much, Connor. And you absolutely have my blessing, permission, whatever it's called, to butt in and interrupt anytime I'm waffling too much and you think there's a question that needs to get asked, right? So just do that. That won't bother me at all. Right. Okay. Well, look, a fantastic warm welcome to you all. It's lovely to see you here. For those of you who've not met me before, my name is James Wilson. I am head of learning and development here at the Readiness Company. A lot of people don't know us. We are a partner of Microsoft's for some 20 years now, and we do an awful lot of work with the Surface team in particular. And we focus with Microsoft and their customers and their partners on not just the selling and installing and fitting of technology, but also the adoption and usage of that technology as well. And that, for me, has actually probably been the vast bulk of my past year. I've never had so many conversations about changing practices around work and how people adapt to new scenarios. So I'm hoping I can share some insights with you from what I've seen over the past couple of years. The topics that I'd like to talk about today, we keep hearing about hybrid working. I want to try and turn that into a really practical conversation because it's all a bit quite woolly for me. A lot of the time, some of these conversations don't have a lot of really practical conversation guidance around them. So I do just want to talk to you a little about that and what it means to you and to your businesses and what you can get out of it, really, to be honest with you. We will look at the Surface family. I don't really want to make this session overly about devices and specifications and things like that. Some of you may have interest in some of those aspects, and I can absolutely supply all of that information. Just ask for that. Anything that you need, we'll sort that out for you. I'd like to generalize the conversation around the devices so that we don't get lost in the detail, because there is an awful lot of specifications around these lovely devices. And then we'll talk a bit about what the difference is between Surface and some of those other technologies, and how we can use that to build these new productive environments that are a bit more flexible and are a bit more diverse, certainly. And then some practicalities around the management of those and securing of those, and how we can make that experience a little bit more positive these days as well. And then finally, we'll talk about the mechanisms to actually start buying and using this stuff in a way that is a bit more practical. So that's the plan for today. We've got quite a few key discussion areas. I like to think this audience is not so big that you can really disrupt anything that we do massively by asking questions. So please do feel free to ask your questions as we go through. There is time in the day allowed for that. For those not super familiar with the Teams environment, just quick drag this in for a second. You've got a few options available to you. If you are keen to ask a question, pop your hand up if you like, and we'll make time to come to you, perhaps if you want to just drop off mute and ask it. I tend to find people are more comfortable putting their questions into chat. Connor's in there waiting for you. He will pounce upon you. He might be able to answer your question directly, so feel free to put questions into there. And if it's not one that Connor can answer, we'll try and team up on that together. If it's not one I can answer either, we will take it away and we will find you the answers that you need from our expert colleagues out there as well. So with that said, let's get into it. I want to start with a little bit of scene setting, as is often the way. I'm just going to do that. Right, we are. Okay. Now, so the first topic then is to talk about hybrid working, and the way that we work has changed, right? It's changed for good, I would say. It is this new normal that we keep hearing about. And that rapid transformation we're in has added a real urgency for companies' efforts around employee well-being and around cloud-based deployment and flexibility as well. So there's just a lot of conversations going on at the minute, and some of those conversations feel a little bit uncomfortable because they're happening quite quickly. It's interesting, Connor's point around sort of home working and distractions around the home environment, because that's very much the reality that we live in. I think The person most likely to disrupt this call, ironically, is me. I've got my dog sat next to me in here, who's, I'm sure, going to be an angel through the course of this session, but we'll see, won't we? Employees are now starting to expect flexibility. Most want options for working from home, sometimes and in person, other times, certainly. And the teams and the tools that we have are better now than ever before, really, for that anytime, anywhere collaboration. But that has made some challenges for IT. The environments are more complex now, and probably more complex than they've been in a long time. And there is this challenge of how do I make sure that the things that I have put out into the world are secure and are fit for purpose and are going to do the things that they need to do. So I think for me, I've summarized this as 3 points. So I wanted to try and make this more practical. Hybrid work is inevitable, I think now. We really can't go back to the pre-pandemic world, whether we like it or not. Hybrid solutions are going to change the operating business model over the next 12 months for many, many companies, if not most. And the question is simply, will we just let that happen, or will we take an active role in shaping that future for the business? It's always the key, isn't it, to change? Is it something that you make happen, or is it simply something that you allow to happen to you? And that's a topic I kind of get into quite a lot. So for me, it's really about capitalizing on the investments we've made, and not just the investments of money in technology, the investments we've made in time, really creating huge amounts of experience and capability within the workforce to do this, to work this way. Bringing people back to work is always a positive, and certainly I've been really keen to get back into the offices and see people, and most people have. Bringing people back safely is a top priority, and employees obviously have their own concerns and reservations about that. But from a technology perspective as well, it's also about making sure that we have strengthened security protocols to protect their hard work, right through from promoting safe practices in the workplace. So Microsoft has been trialing new ideas to create a new standard of best practice that's built around that principle. And some of their examples include creating solutions like using the Power Platform to make applications that allow you to conduct a health check and book a meeting space and sort of clock in and clock out and all that kind of stuff. So they're trying to put employee well-being and health physically and mentally on the agenda so that staff do feel safe and more supported. And that's something I think we're going to see a lot more of. I'm quite pleased about that personally. So those changes won't happen overnight, and many will feel that they perhaps don't have a lot of experience around those changes. I think most of us are figuring this out as we go along, but that's been proven during the pandemic era to be, untrue, that we can make change, right? We've been able to do that. So we absolutely can emerge from this period stronger than we were before. And with Microsoft Teams rooms as well, we've got this opportunity now to start designing for the people that aren't in the room, and we're turning the remote experience on its head a bit and bringing participants into the meeting room, so everyone feels like they are at the table and they can be seen and they can be heard. And solutions are improving all the time. There's exciting new stuff on the way, but the solutions in the market today allow us to allow people to feel a part of the conversation, even if they can't be there in person. That's quite a big step forward from where we were 2 years ago. One of the things I've really had to become a lot more aware of over the past couple of years, certainly for when training and just meetings generally, is how my deliveries connect for those who are in the audience who don't want to participate verbally. As an example, this has been a huge eye-opener for me. It's not treating people how you want to be treated, it's treating people how they want to be treated that matters, isn't it? And not everyone wants to talk, not everyone wants to be on camera, not everyone wants to do things the same way that we do. So we've had to really think about certain engagements and deliveries and how we've approached every situation. These are big challenges. They're not quick fixes that we can make overnight or with a wave of a wand or surface pole. But for now, let's focus on the technology, this idea of how devices can fit into this conversation. Investment in modern devices is helping businesses to gain an advantage and is helping businesses to meet some of those challenges. Both in creating flexible environments, but also driving those productivity goals that haven't really gone away. And one of the interesting conversations for me has been retaining your talent by heading off burnout. This idea that actually showing that love to people in the form of devices, but also in the form of investment in them has been a really positive conversation that's gone really well. People have liked being able to get these mobile solutions so they can work at home, and they've responded really positively to that. If that doesn't sound too important or a high priority for you at the minute, consider that we're probably now in the wake of nearly 2 years working from home, some of us in the same room for 2 years. And that can relate to the very real threat that burnout and exhaustion presents to the workforce. I don't think I've ever felt so tired as I have in the last 18 months as a professional. And I'm not sure I've ever worked as hard either. So obviously the two are correlated, but it has been quite a challenging couple of years, right? HR departments, they spend a lot of money on recruitment and an even larger amount of money on onboarding staff and retaining staff as well. So there are some interesting new conversations to be had around how we take advantage of the technologies now to support those parts of the business. And it's been interesting to see my customers, whether IT decision makers or IT professionals, they've been finding new avenues of support from the business, from HR and other teams who need to get solutions to help them meet their requirements as well. And technology is just becoming the thing that's in every conversation, isn't it? So our poor old colleagues in IT are really now starting to get roped into everything. I was doing a healthcare speech the other day, and we were looking at the cost of onboarding nurses. It's a very hot topic at the minute, isn't it? So for those who are not familiar with that, the cost of onboarding a nurse in the UK is about 3 years, first of all, in terms of training and onboarding and support to make sure that they can do the role, and about £60,000. So the human cost is one thing, but the financial cost is massive as well. People will always be the most important asset, won't they? And the most significant investment that we make in any business. So the Surface family then has come a long way, and has always had this goal of trying to be fit for that environment and fit for that purpose. I'll share with you briefly just how far we have come. Surface began, I was working as a consultant in the PC world in Thurrock in Essex. I don't think it was local to that area, but it's a curious part of the world. And they brought one of these in, and it was it's a table. It's about the size of a typical dining table, and it has a touch top, and you can play around with your photos on it, all kinds of crazy stuff. These were about £10,000 at the time. Be surprised to hear they were quite popular in hotels in America. But this was the first technology that really proved that we could make things different with touch and these technologies, and that began this relentless iteration of new devices and new concepts and new opportunities to work in different ways. And Microsoft has really put the foot to the floor and delivered new device after new device. And they're good devices too. And it's interesting to see how many of these are groundbreaking. There's nothing like the Surface, a 2-in-1 device, prior to Microsoft bringing 2-in-1 devices into the market. We see all manner of them now, but they didn't really exist prior to Surface. Touchscreen was a really experimental technology, so that's come a huge way with Surface. Devices like Studio that were built for those more artistic or engineering engagements didn't really exist beforehand. There were touch pads and touch tablets and things like that, but being able to actually put a pen to screen and make something happen wasn't really a thing. These large collaborative devices, we've had sort of interactive blackboards and things like that for a long time, but again, nothing really quite in the category here. So they're innovating at a really quite frightening pace. And that's led us to where we are with our current family of technologies. So we have a range that looks a bit like this. There's some new devices. There's some really good promotions on these devices at the minute as well. It's Black Friday week, isn't it? So I won't get into that. If you're curious, ask questions by all means. But there are some really quite some good deals to be had at this time of year in technology, aren't there? So the range spans really from Duo, which is perhaps the pinnacle of mobility and still represents a really quite powerful device for what it is. It's a fantastic little mobile device, and goes right up to Surface Hub, which is the kind of pinnacle of collaboration really, and allows for you to set up a meeting environment that really draws people in. So it's been an interesting thing for me when we've looked at trials on Surface Hub. If we do engagements with customers who try these out, you see the meeting rooms where there's a hub become fully booked all the time. People really like having meetings with a hub. It's an enjoyable experience. Not saying having a meeting without a hub is not an enjoyable experience, but it is interesting to see how those bookings fill up in places where you get a hub. So what this has meant for us, this diversity in the range, that sheer diversity in the family, has allowed us to focus on finding the best device for any customer. And I think often a business will select a default laptop for all employees to roll it out. And that might simplify the rollout, or it might support a legacy process or something like that. You might feel safe with the particular device that's been tested. But that approach does somewhat constrain our capacity for change, and it does sort of force us into the same place that we've been in before. And it allows the employee no real space for preference or choice in the devices that they want to use or the ways that they want to work as well. So different people have different needs and priorities and uses for their devices, certainly. So there's a real commitment from Microsoft to try and reflect that in the range. And there's lots of good examples, right? For instance, 1 in 10 of us have a disability, and most of the time it isn't something that you would recognize from the outside. Businesses that take an approach to accessibility when purchasing devices and enabling people to choose the right device can get better results with their employees, can help drive those inclusion and well-being and wellness goals that are starting to become more prevalent now. So our focus is not on selling hardware, but selling the right hardware, selling the right solution to the right person or the people, a solution that works for each individual. That's why there's such a focus on choice, breadth. I think for me, that's always been something that I've liked about Microsoft, is that you do have a lot of choice, whether it be shapes, sizes, form factors, colors, the software that you use, the accessories that you use, because of their commitment to partnership as well, the fantastic partner ecosystem that's out there. There's always been a lot of choice. You're not constrained by ecosystems or other things like that. So when you pair that with the Microsoft 365 stack to provide a customer solution, well, that works from the chips and device right the way through to the cloud. So choice, huge. And we see a lot of opportunity to help people in really quite specific roles that wasn't there before, hence devices like Studio that provide support for our engineering colleagues and things like that. So I want to answer this question: what makes Surface so special? Why would people consider Surface? And it is perhaps more connected today to some of the real goals and values that organizations are trying to achieve than I've seen in some time. So most of us are familiar with the idea that giving people a better, more powerful device helps them to want to contribute more. So there are these ideas that actually we can drive greater return on investment in technology by looking at what's budgeted for hardware and helping people to get a more practical solution for what they want to do. And I'd like to try and turn that into real terms. We think about mobile phones. It's always been an interesting point for me. We make investment into mobile phones because we use them a lot. Generally, that's the rationale. And if I were to do a quick poll or a quick survey and ask you to raise your hand if you owned either a flagship iPhone or a flagship Samsung phone, I think we'd probably get a lot of people on this call who've got one or the other. And that's because these devices are in a class of their own and they add a lot of value on a day-to-day basis. And it's that same sort of principle, I think, that applies with Surface category. And sometimes people who are not sure about the price tag or the requirement for a more premium device sometimes don't necessarily see that straight away. But when you are going to use a device all the time, it should be a good device. And we see the returns on those investments quite a lot. So many of us are able to relate to the benefits of having nice devices, certainly, but also simpler devices to deploy have made a huge difference over the past 2 years. I'll talk to you a little about Autopilot in a while, which is a technology that allows you to deliver a device to somebody at home that's never been opened, that's never touched an IT department office, it's never been in the cupboard, and they can open that box and set it up themselves automatically just by logging into it, and it will pull down their profiles, it will pull down their software from the internet, and it will set itself up. That technology, Autopilot, which Microsoft developed for Surface and is now shared, it's available for all Windows devices that support it, has really made a big difference. And I mean, I've spent my fair share of time in a dark room with a pile of 50 laptops that I've had to set up for people. I know what that experience is like. I know how much it's hard work and how internet connections don't seem to apply, the normal laws of physics when you're trying to update 4 or more machines at once. All these kind of bugs and issues that you bump into as an IT professional, they're irritating. And this idea that you can pre-configure profiles for people and distribute devices from a source, they'll go straight to your colleagues out in the field. They can open them, log into them, and use them straight away. That for me is one of the things that really connected on a personal level from some of my experiences as to an opportunity I'm really pleased to see. So these zero touch deployment conversations, if you've not had those yet and you're curious to learn more about that, please let us know. I think you'd be very interested to hear how those work and what they can do for you. The security side of that is a bit of a given, but also when you have that ability to deploy profiles and to manage stuff remotely without needing to get your hands on the device, without needing to make a complex process for how people allow access or any of that stuff, you can not only set up and deploy and configure, but you can maintain and manage and update all from the comfort of your own home using web-based tools that you can access remotely. You don't even have to go into the office to manage an entire ecosystem of devices. So that's been a real step forward. It's taken a while to make it as polished as it is today, but it's a real step forward in terms of IT management and deployment. I want to focus on some of these other areas as well, because they don't get a lot of airtime typically. And Surface and Microsoft in particular know that we all stand to gain from more inclusive, accessible developments in technology in the way that we work. And remote and hybrid working has really highlighted the need for better digital experiences for people of all abilities, so that the talents of your workforce can shine through. And products like the Surface Adaptive Kit make products easier to open, easier to navigate, easier to use. The commitments to developments in Teams, such as improvements in closed captioning and background blur and Windows dictation. Windows dictation is fantastic. If anyone's not tried that, please try that out. These make a difference for people who need them. And you may not necessarily need them all the time. I broke my wrist. I've got a fantastic scar on my wrist where I've shattered my wrist 2 years ago. And I did all of my work using dictation on the computer. And I was talking to my computer like a lunatic for a couple of months. That technology was good at the time. It is now so good. You really can use that as an alternative to typing if you're not a confident typer. So you don't even need to particularly require it for it to add that value. So this approach that Microsoft has taken is good. It's a nice step in the right direction. It does drive more inclusivity. And it does drive a more practical consideration for people who need it within the workforce. The other side of this that's not talked about so often is sustainability. And Microsoft has set very ambitious goals when it comes to sustainability by integrating Surface devices. Organizations are taking a real positive step on their own now to drive their own sustainability efforts. And Microsoft's goals to minimize their impact on the planet are pretty significant. By 2030, Microsoft will be carbon negative. And carbon negative is not a term you hear very much at the minute. It will be, we hope. And that comes from having 100% recyclable devices and packaging. By 2050, they will be removing from our planet the amount of carbon equivalent to all of the company's carbon it's ever founded. So that's their goal. It's not only to get carbon neutral, but to get carbon negative and to actually reverse all of the historic damage that's been done by Microsoft's carbon footprint ever. And that's quite a commitment for a very, very large organization. Just in case people aren't looking at MCAP charts and stuff like that all the time, Microsoft is number 2. There aren't many trillion-dollar companies out there. Microsoft is the second largest by market cap, just behind Apple on the planet. So that is a staggering commitment to sustainability. And I really hope that many others will feel inspired to look at their sustainability and think about how they can do stuff as well. So there's been massive adaptation to things like commercial packaging and things like that to make sure that the waste is minimized. You don't need fancy shiny boxes when you're buying 10,000 devices, right? A bog standard recyclable cardboard box will do the job. So that is a hot topic at the minute, obviously with the COP summit finishing recently. That is on a lot of people's minds. If it's on your mind, have a chat with us about some of the opportunities there to do more. And that kind of brings us then to this point around creating environments for people and for their role, and building these productive and flexible environments. Whether your employees plan to work from home, in the office, or anywhere in between, one thing's become very clear. Some are going to need portability and power on the go, while others will want to settle in place a bit more, and that's totally fine, right? The Microsoft workforce has been doing this now for the last couple of years. So our store staff have been they've been working from home, and they've had those distractions, the dogs barking, the kids needing help with their homework and all that kind of stuff. I think that's been one of the most positive aspects of the pandemic and the lockdown. It's been very humanizing in terms of people of all ranks of seniority and so forth. Everyone's got children that walk into the room and dogs that bark. And I think that's been quite a nice leveling aspect of what we've been through over the past couple of years. And I think also it's not surprising to me that staff are so keen on the idea of not going back to the workplace. Yeah, people want to see people and they do want to have that human contact, but people don't seem to really want to work more than 2 to 3 days in the office. And there'd be a much more even balance of working from home and working in the office space. So I think you can expect those conversations to grow in volume more and more. And who misses that? Who misses traveling all over the city in London to get to 2 or 3 meetings when you can have 7 or 8 meetings at home? Not sure if that's a great example, but saving those face-to-face visits for more special occasions doesn't seem like the end of the world, does it? And I think recognizing those different environments in which we want to work, sometimes it is on the go, and sometimes it is at home. That's going to become an increasing priority for the devices that we choose, the hardware that we pick, the software that we pick, but also the skills that we try and help grow in the workforce as well. So nothing inspires teamwork more, I suppose, than the face-to-face collaboration. And while we can't always replace that, the advances in Teams, the advances in cameras, advances in speakers, in microphones have enabled us to provide devices that are fit for purpose, and they do help people to make the best of this situation. And what we've seen is that people just customize and continue to customize those environments. They like to get good headsets and good headphones. I've got myself a nice earpiece and it works pretty good. I don't think anyone's had to buy headsets over the past year. That's been quite a challenge at times. Cameras in particular as well have been quite a challenge. So if you had to go through those procurement nightmares, I sympathize wholeheartedly with you. But that's been a part of the experience, hasn't it? Investing in those headsets, those speakers, those cameras, and so forth, to make sure people have got what they want. And for Surface, we've also seen how it's been necessary to make investments in other areas as well. Some people have wanted to take advantage of, for instance, the touch interface more, and they wanted to use the pen because actually they feel more comfortable handwriting than they feel typing. And some people have wanted those keyboards, and they've wanted the adaptive kits to make sure that the devices are easier to use if they maybe struggle to get the things open in the first place. These clamshell designs that are all the rage now can be a bit tricky. So we're focused on accessories that help create immersive experiences for people and individuals as well. And we want people to be able to get a broad range of customization, whether it be getting a second monitor or getting a standalone keyboard or a mouse or a dock to set all that stuff up. The dream for me is that you have all of the scale and user comforts that you need in the home, but then you can kind of pick up a very light device and disappear off with that out the door when you need to, and maybe take a small mouse with you if you need. What you need to put in your bag these days to get stuff done is a far cry from where it was last time I was being highly mobile, that's for sure. So you can customize and you can do what you want to do, and I think that's a conversation that is very welcome these days. And certainly the accessories that are getting created, I wanted to make time to make an important highlight this particular device for you, because this is a real challenge, right? Ocean plastic, and we talked about sustainability. So Microsoft have now released a sustainable mouse, an ocean plastic mouse. If you see these out there, these are nice little devices. They're not very expensive, and again, Microsoft's commitments to the planet rely on initiatives like this to try and inspire new ways of getting stuff done. Be amazed at how many mouse or mice are purchased in the course of a year. It's pretty consumable device, it turns out. So that customization of environment, that tailoring of environment, is something that we can do, but also we need to secure that. And I think we're seeing an unprecedented amount of remote work. We are seeing an unprecedented amount of, welcome back, Nick. I feel for you. I can see it.
Our internet keeps on dropping off.
I can see. I do feel for you. Hang back afterwards if you've got any questions. We'll go. I'll take you on a whiz tour of anything you missed. Certainly. We're just talking about tailoring environments for people, whether that be through device or through accessories, but also now managing and securing those environments. And we're seeing an unprecedented amount, aren't we, of remote work, whether that's been mandated or not. But we're also seeing an unprecedented amount of cybercrime as well, which is an unfortunate side effect of what we're going through. But certain areas of the world are being targeted more so than others. Healthcare industry is probably top of the list, sadly, at the minute for being targeted in this way. And I wanted to spend a moment just to talk about LTE technology in particular, and why that is so important these days, especially if you are working with colleagues who are out in the field. I like to use this as an example of what the world may not be prepared for. This is a device which I won't name just for the sake of not wanting to add fuel to this particular fire. But this is a product that you can buy, and it's essentially a small portable Wi-Fi piece of kit. Some of you may have come across these before. It was originally created for network penetration testing. Microsoft have teams of pen testers, massive teams of pen testers. They call them red team and blue team. It's sort of an industry term for that. And they form a part of what is wider known in the industry as ethical hacking, and they essentially try and attack a company and show them how to fix the vulnerabilities that they've been able to discover. Well, that's great until these products are available on Amazon, which they now are, and come with guides on how you can set up a fake Wi-Fi to test the security of a company. So what we've seen is this absolute uplift in risk now for people who are out in the field. If they connect to a Wi-Fi at a coffee shop or a restaurant, they may not actually be connecting to a Wi-Fi at a coffee shop or a restaurant. They may be connecting to a fake Wi-Fi network that's been set up to perform what these devices are for, which is what's called a man-in-the-middle attack, where they can intercept banking details, secure logon details, all sorts of file transfer, and anything else that employee intended to do on a public Wi-Fi solution. And I talk about this with customers quite regularly, and I'm always met with the same response, which is, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. And that's always the way, isn't it? You cannot expect anybody, even IT professionals, to keep up with the level of threat that is going on these days. It's just ridiculous to expect that. So we almost have to take a responsibility ourselves to ensure that we mitigate as many of these threats as possible. And people say to me, what's so good about LTE? I've got my phone, I can just tether to my phone, and you can do that. There are options to do that. But LTE obviously opens up internet capability on any device anywhere, but the beauty of LTE in particular is this idea that you can connect to that device and manage it and secure it and update it wherever it is, whenever you need to. As an IT organization, you can look after devices much more hands-on in that fashion. And when somebody's out in the field, they never need to worry about connecting to perhaps potentially unsafe networks in order to get stuff done. They've got the connection they need there and ready, and that connection is managed, dedicated. So it is a good way to give employees access to fast, secure internet in nearly every country. And that just means a massively reduced security risk that comes with not using these public addresses and public Wi-Fi networks. So there's some not well talked about benefits that sit with this, and people kind of assume I don't need LTE because I've got other solutions in place. That may be the case. But if you've got this concern that actually someone might be connecting to public Wi-Fi, things like that, there are things you can do about that now, and you may be surprised to hear they're not, significantly complex or expensive solutions. And Microsoft takes that fairly holistic approach of security right the way across the stack. They've got baked-in security features like Windows Hello, which I've been talking about for years. It's been around for a while now, hasn't it, since Windows 10 first came out. The idea that you can sign in with your face. And there are power buttons that feature fingerprint scanners now, which is brilliant innovation, so that we can actually get quite practical security solutions in place for people without making their experience much more complicated. There was a time, wasn't there, that really, if you wanted to improve security, you just had to make it harder for people to get into the system in the first place, which included your own colleagues. More complex passwords, triple stage sign-on, verification pins being sent to mobile phones. All of that stuff is great, and it's going to be here to stay. But some of these solutions can be easy, and they don't have to be, quite clunky solutions for how people get into their devices. So facial recognition, fingerprint recognition, those biometric pieces, they're quite nice additions to a security solution that you may be considering that don't make it more difficult for people to actually get in the first place. No one forgets their face, or it's very unusual to forget your face. Right, so moving on, we talked earlier about the deployment and management innovations as well, and the reason some of these are so popular. And it is about getting headaches away from IT. We talked about Autopilot earlier, but there are tools like Intune. Intune is the management tool that Microsoft used to manage endpoint devices. And that allows you to manage everything you've got, even in a really dispersed remote working workforce. And those tools are Microsoft tools. They're not particularly alien to professionals who are familiar with Office 365, who are familiar with administering anything for Microsoft before. So that complexity is reduced. And with reduced complexity is reduced cost and reduced project turnaround time, and more freedom to allocate resource to other things that are important. So that's quite important. There are very public commitments that Microsoft make around data protection. Your data is yours always, no matter what. There is no compromise on that. And they commit to that in writing all over their compliance pages, all over their Azure pages. It is a commitment that's made very visibly and has led to Microsoft achieving the highest levels of compliance and certification for any cloud, any public cloud solution on the planet. And that's something they're quite keen to shout about. So those are some of the commitments that are made around security, but also making sure that those devices stay up to date and continue to be up to date as time goes on is a commitment that Microsoft have made as well. So plenty of people out there still using Surface devices from many generations back that are still being updated and still being used very reliably. So final couple of points from me. We're rapidly approaching the end. I wanted to talk briefly about device as a service. This is a service that's offered by some partners out there and by ACS in particular, a fantastic device as a service option. What it essentially allows you to do is build the solution that you want without having to commit massively in terms of upfront investment, which is always a bit of a barrier when it comes to managing IT budgets in the first place, because IT budgets are ever shrinking and the demands of them ever increasing, certainly. So we know that there is a real challenge to build a good solution for people without massively hurting your budget strategy. So the idea behind this is pretty simple, that we can bundle the software, we can bundle the hardware, we can bundle the accessories, we can wrap all of that up as a solution piece, and then we can scatter the price as we would Office 365 or any of the other cloud-based services where we've seen the positivity around making those OPEX purchases as opposed to CAPEX purchases. So you can now work with ACS to specify devices, specify the software that you would like on those, specify the accessories and services that you would like to go with them, and then have those conversations with ACS as well about the service offerings that they provide, whether that be support or training or other things. And then set those up as a spread cost so that you are not only able to then spread the cost of payment, but also you're not necessarily owning a device that you feel uncomfortable has got quite a rapidly diminishing return value when it comes to the end of 2-3 years. So you can specify whether you'd like to refresh those devices without those incurred costs. We know this is a popular model. We've seen it with cars, we've seen it with software, we've seen it with basically everything. So it is now a solution that is available to you to give you more choice. We said before, this is what it is all about, is choice. And we've seen real popularity with that from customers, lots of different customers out there engaging with Surface, certainly in lots of different ways, as there's case studies around. And I wanted to, not to dwell on case studies, I think it's only so much you can get from someone else's case study unless they've got the exact same problems that you're facing, and we'd like to talk about those. But we do have fairly now extensive experience of talking with customers about the challenges they face and how these technologies can support them and help them. So if you do have goals that you'd like to work towards, let us know, and we can not only help you build a solution and a plan that will fit that, but show you where that's worked elsewhere. And I've got dozens of these I could go through. I won't go through too many of them today. So we are a few short minutes away from the end of the session, and I want to make plenty of time for you to ask questions. So I'm just going to bring up our summary of what we've talked about today. There's a few topics, and we rattle through them at a fairly blistering pace. And some of you only caught glimpses in between disconnects and so forth. But if you have got questions for us, obviously there's two things you can do. One, if it's a question you're happy to ask now, by all means ask it now, and we'll do our best to answer those for you. If you'd prefer to sort of hang back and ask those questions, you're very welcome to do that as well. Or if you prefer to arrange a time to have a chat with myself or with Connor, let us know. We can go through that with you as well. But I think for me, it just remains to say thank you for your time. I am going to hand over to Connor to kind of make his closing statement as well, and then we'll kind of free the floor up for your questions. So Connor, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much. We do have some. We've got a comment here from Jason. Around many of us are using Teams today. Challenge being around different headphone solutions, having to swap out a lightweight Plantronics with decent sound cancelling microphone to sound cancelling full headphones because of the distractions in the office. Was using AirPod pros, but they are great at cancelling noise for the user, but rubbish at picking up noise for others. Recommendations for any would be handy based on environment. So is there anything, any thoughts you have to that at all, James?
Yeah, so it's a brilliant question. I was having this conversation with a customer the other day because we have grown so accustomed to nice, quiet spaces at home where we're not being talked over, we haven't got people next to us. Going back into the office is really quite jarring for a lot of colleagues who then are like, oh God, I can't hear anything. So yeah, it's a really, really good question. For me, this is down to, I hate to say it because it's a little bit technical, but it's about understanding the difference in some of the technologies that are available on headsets and supporting staff to figure that out as well. Because there is a difference between noise cancellation and active noise cancellation. And you find headsets that do a really good job of cancelling your background noise, but then do nothing to cut out the noise around you. I'm a perfect example of that. I use an earpiece. It just doesn't work for that in a noisy environment. But people have no idea. When I'm shouting at them because I can't hear them, they think I'm a lunatic because they're not hearing all of the background noise I'm hearing. So that's the technology that does it. It's that noise cancellation that's crucial. Surface release a couple of over-ear headphones that have an adjustable dial on the side that allows you to tailor the amount of background noise that you want to hear, because sometimes you're walking on the streets, you do want to hear if there's a car coming at you or something like that. But then equally, when you're in the office, you can turn up that active noise cancellation quite a lot so that you're not hearing the distractions around you. Headphones manufacturers are absolutely rubbing their hands together at the minute because they're innovating these new technologies, and of course they're able to charge already quite premium prices for headphones, and the prices have been going up over the last couple of years. So what I would say is twofold. One, have a look at Surface headphones. They've always had a fairly premium price tag, but unlike everyone else's, they've not gone up in the past 2 years. So now you're probably getting a better deal than ever on some of these higher end premium headphones. Surface make them themselves. There are other companies that make them as well if you'd like to look at alternatives. But yeah, it's an excellent question. And for me, it's about that, just understanding the difference between noise cancellation and active noise cancellation, which I'm sorry is a bit techie, but it is crucial at the minute.
We've got a comment in there from Jenny, which is given us a link to the range of devices. As highlighted, we're also happy to support with the demo accessories. So Jason, on that side of things, your ACS account manager, if there's anything we can do to support on that, let us know. James highlighted it earlier. Look, stock availability when it comes to headsets and certain peripherals is challenging. But we're happy to support on that and look to understand how we can help.
And it's pretty good at the moment as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right now, it's pretty good. So yeah, don't be too scared of that just now. I know it's been a complete nightmare for the past couple of years, but it's not too bad at the minute.
And the other thing to mention, this is going a bit off piece, but we at ACS have done quite a lot about it at the moment, is how the old traditional office working space is not necessarily designed for the new teams ways of working that we've become so accustomed to. We've got some really good content on that on our YouTube channels and on our LinkedIn, and I suppose where ACS are quite nicely positioned is that we understand the technology, but we also understand the interiors side of things. So for anyone out there who's seen a similar issue to what Jason's referencing there and wants to understand not just what technology can we use to overcome that challenge, but can we make improvements to our environment to make it a more conducive space for teams and that kind of meeting, we're always happy to support on those conversations as well.
Guys, I've just unmuted myself for a moment. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. As you say, I've switched headphones. I use the little headset thing for the Plantronics, which is great because it's really good at getting rid of the noise for the recorder. But after this call, I've got to go on to another Teams with my colleague. In the interest of social distance, he'll be on his machine, I'll be on my machine, and we'll be on a call with about another 4 or 5 other people. So when you're in the same room, you've got an echo and a delay and everything else. So these Bose sound cancelling things are great, but the microphone is not so good. So it's just everything. It feels like one way or another there's a slight compromise, but we'll have a look at the ones that you've recommended.
It does. Yeah, I really sympathise. I've got the exact same earpiece. I've had exactly the same problem. I've also got the over ears as well. I would recommend the Surface headphones. I know that they are a premium price product, but as I said, I think now you are probably paying less in real terms for that than you would have been when they first came onto the market. And Microsoft have just released relatively recently the second iteration of those, and they're even better. And what sets them apart is that ability to adjust the amount of active noise cancellation. It's a really fantastic feature. If you get a chance, try them out.
to be really boring about headphones, it's like
On Jenny.
Microsoft.
What have I started? I'm sorry.
No,
No,
it's
that's
important.
okay. Well, I prior to, but I'm a real headphone bore because I used to work for Jabra before I worked at Microsoft. So I guess one thing with headphones, and particularly now we're in the hybrid workplace and the whole way we kind of work as we've kind of discussed this morning, it's easy to overlook your peripherals, and I don't mean kind of go cheap on them, but kind of not include them as part of the solution, if that makes sense. So to kind of James's point, I think decent Teams certified headphones, not just from your main kind of manufacturers, but also third party, will be more premium priced, but don't let that price put you off. As you've kind of all of you have experienced, you need one set of headphones, not 3 pairs for different, you know, we don't like 3 pairs of reading glasses for different things. You know, really don't compromise on that periphery, I guess, is my message. And again, as I put in the chat, working with ACS, look, like we trial devices, let's you know, let's demo out some of those peripheries as well to make sure they work and work for you, because it is really important to kind of get that piece right.
Yeah, don't sleep on over-ear headphones would be my advice to anybody,
Yeah.
because I've got customers who've invested thousands of pounds into these specific headsets because they are rated so highly. They're excellent headsets, but they just don't have that feature, and they've got countless inquiries from staff that said, now that I'm back in the office, I can't hear myself think, have you got anything else? And it's ironic that some of the older headsets they had, far cheaper than the 80 quid Plantronics pieces, that Poly pieces, they're getting put back into circulation because they're over ear. So don't sleep on those. But even the over ears, the microphones on the older models are not so great. So they end up where Jason's currently out, just kind of, I like these, but they're not so great for talking. It warrants a bit of extra time and attention to trial a few devices, to Jenny's point, and you may find it saves you an awful lot of time and energy later when people aren't coming back saying, yeah, it's great for this, but it's rubbish for that. You got anything else? So yeah, that was a really, that question resonates very much at the minute, because I'm having that exact conversation with a couple of other customers right now.
But also, sorry, just to follow on, I told you I could bore you. It's 2 points lastly is, I guess when I'm saying about don't kind of compromise on your periphery and don't be turned off by the cost, that's where the device as a service and leasing piece comes in, because you can then bundle, you know, you can take that cost of your headphone and add that to you know, your device, your kind of capex opex costs. So that's where you shouldn't kind of be, you know, be deterred by the price point. Lastly, and I won't say anything else either because I think my dog's about to bark, is they are amazing active noise cancellation on aeroplanes as well. They block out so much noise. So
yeah, it makes a big difference. Super, thank you, Jenny. Okay, I think we've overrun our slot a little bit here, so I don't want to say anything else myself, but I am certainly going to stay on the call until everyone else is satisfied they've got all their questions answered. So if you do want to hang back and ask anything, please do feel free. I guess back to you again.
Yeah, I was just going to check. Is there any other questions that we've got outstanding that anyone wanted to put to the room at this point? I know we've covered off quite a few different bases, and certainly, hopefully, Jason, that's answered your question. But yeah, any other cracking, any other questions from the room at all? And this is where we do that awkward 10-second, 15-second wait to see if anyone starts typing. And I'm just going to keep saying words to fill that silence.
What if they want to come off mute and ask a question?
I'm having a little look at the chat. It still appears, if anyone wants to take themselves off mute, they're welcome to throw a question out there, but it looks like we're all still muted. Okay, well, look, so as James has highlighted, you know, James will stick on the call for a couple more minutes afterwards as well, if anyone's got any questions for him. James, really appreciate you joining us today as well. Great insight there, so that's greatly appreciated. I'm just going to put a little link into the chat, which is a link to our Microsoft events page. Our next event is next week, and that is the in-person event at ACS House. So we're really looking forward to hosting. We do still have a couple of spaces there, so if anyone would like to join and they're not currently registered, please follow the link. Thanks, Jason. Take care. Have a good day.
Cheers, Jason.
Yeah,
All
if
the
anyone
best.
wants to get registered, feel free to do so. We'd love to see you at ACS House, but it just kind of leaves me to say thank you all for attending. James will stick around, as will I, for a minute, and hope you all have a good day.
Yeah, have a great day, and lovely to see so many of you. All the best.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.